Hi. So, finally, it's time to start this long session. I remember I don't have to move so much. So yeah, we'll start a 3-hour session. You just had lunch. The seats are really comfortable, so I think we'll need a little warm-up, right? So don't worry, I won't ask you to stand up because I see a lot of you have their computers on their laps, etc. Just the following. If you are right-handed, raise your right arm. Okay. If you are left-handed, raise your left arm. Right arm, you can keep your arm up. Okay. The others, just say quack. No? No others? Okay. So, this little exercise is really important because we have 3 hours. You may have a lot of questions, and I don't want you to wait for the end of these 3 hours in order to ask me a question. So if you don't understood the sentence I just said, or if you don't understood just one part of something I'm explaining, just raise your arm, and you'll need to wait for the end of the sentence, the end of the idea, or the end of the talk. I don't know. But I promise you I will answer your question. At least I'll try. So, my name is Noël Mace. Yeah, with a lot of accent, it's French. I'm an independent developer advocate for the web platform, so that's my boilerplate. I went back to freelancing 1 month ago. Before that, I was a developer advocate for different companies. I started to teach and give talks 10 years ago, mostly about the web platform. I heard that DevOps is mostly a backend, Java-oriented event. So who is a web developer? Who identifies himself as a web developer here? Raise your arm. Okay, tough crowd. Okay. Just to reassure you, maybe I will troll a little about backend and Java. I did a lot of Java in the past, but I stopped it 6 years ago when I chose to focus on the web platform. Maybe when I say web platform, it don't mean anything for some of you, yeah? Yeah? There is your arm if you don't understand web platform. Okay. So just to be clear, when I say web platform, it's the fact that there is a lot of standards behind the web. And these standards permit you to write web apps, okay? Not just websites. And we'll talk about that during these 3 hours. So I say 3 hours. We'll take a break in the middle, okay? I don't know how long. I will tell you at which time you have to get back here. Okay, but yeah, you will have time for some coffee or just discuss with me. Personally, I will just take a coffee and get back here in order to discuss with you. Okay, so we'll have 75 minutes, then an half hour break, then 75 minutes again. And so there is 2 parts in this talk. The first one, we will mostly talk about the past and the present. Okay, and then, for the second part, we'll talk about the future of the web platform, a lot of new drafts, new technologies, innovation, anyway, that you can start to experiment, etc. And which can change a lot how you see the web platform. So, of course, you can follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, but yeah, who cares? You can just take these slides with you. Maybe for 3 hours it will be better for you to have these slides. My apologies by advance. I did not have a lot of time to make every slide responsive, so maybe if you are on your smartphone, it won't be great for every slide, especially code, because I had to change the resolution on my screen for this talk. So yeah, you have devoxb-2019.wof.show. WOF stands for Web on Fire. This is a talk I started 2 years ago, and I update every 6 months. So this is the version 4 Devox, and you can also go to conf.wof.show for the continuously deployed version. Warm up again. Do you have some question for me right now? No? You are shy? If you are shy, say yeah. Yeah, okay, thank you. So, past and present. We'll talk about here mostly about what PWA means, progressive web apps, and why there is fire in the title of this web talk, okay? And then we'll talk about how the web platform evolves, what are the standard organization, etc. And after that, part 2, we'll talk about the future, as I promised. Maybe this part will be shorter than 75 minutes, or maybe we'll start with the second part before the break. So, F.I.R.E. origins, the beginnings. So, progressive web apps was acronym was invented in 2015 by Frances Berryman. Frances Berryman came with the idea of progressive. I will explain exactly what it means later. And Alex Russell wrote a blog post about it. Alex Russell worked at Google, he still works at Google. And a lot of what it was and is still going on about progressive web apps came from Google. But right now, a lot of other companies advocate for progressive web apps. If you go, for example, to the Mozilla Developer Network, MDN, you'll see that there is a progressive web app page, etc., etc. So he wrote a blog post about it, escaping tabs without losing our souls. And by the way, I forgot to tell you about something. For the ones that took the link to these slides, the first 2 slides, you have all the links in order to have all the explanation, etc. And the notes right here, there is all the resources I'll talk about, and a lot more. You can find it right there. So, for example, this blog post, you'll find it here, and here it's just at home if you want to try the demonstration, etc. It's not well documented. So, yeah, right here. So, what does this blog post say? So it was 4 years ago. Another way, a new evolution. This is a revolution, etc., etc., etc. There was some innovation, some new standards that were discussed, and these new standards permitted to have this revolution with the web platform. So what does it mean? Until then, you could still write web apps, right? For example, Google Maps started a long time ago, long before 2015. It was still a web app, but it wasn't a progressive web app. It wasn't really integrated in the system, etc. So what this means, and we'll go deeper in that later, it's your web app, your website, need to use these new technologies in order to become amazing, right? So what are these vitamins? Right after, this is why we'll talk about F.I.R.E. But the idea behind progressive is mostly to say the same thing, the same good practice that with native apps. You need to progressively permit something. Because the web platform is all about openness, of course, but also privacy. You don't want to ask every visitor on your website the localizations, the notification, etc., etc., etc. And this is why right now the web starts to be boring. And a lot of people hate the web right now, unfortunately, because a lot of developers, companies, decision don't come from developers for this kind of stuff. They just do a lot of bad practice. How many of you are tired to see all websites ask you for notification right away? Yeah? More than that, I hope. Yeah? Okay. I'm really tired of that. So what progressive means is that as your user will continue to use your website, it will agree with giving you some permissions, like notification, like add to home screen, we will see that later, localization, etc., etc., etc. So you don't start with a progressive web app. You start with a website, something that gives information to people, and when your user have enough information to trust you, this will become a web app, a progressive web app. So yeah, this is everything, mostly everything in this blog post. If you go to this blog post or you go to the web archives, you'll see that at the beginning there was a long list of what for developers progressive web apps means. A really long list with a lot of complicated stuff behind, etc. So in order, when this started to grow, in order to permit for developers to not just remember, okay, progressively become apps, but I don't know what it means, it started to have this FIRE sentence. But before that, the main issue I see in the acronym Progressive Web Apps is that when you hear, most people hear Progressive Web Apps right now, they only think about one part of the FIRE thing, the integration in the system, the add to home screen, the installation, the fact that it looks like a native app. All right? But this isn't what there is behind Progressive Web App for developers. This is important to advocate for this part for business people. This is why Google talked about this so much, etc. It's just to make business people realize that they don't have to ask for a native app. They can use the web platform for that, okay? The new evolution, etc. But when you are a web developer, you don't really care about that. You want to use the technology you like, you want to understand what it means to make a good web app, etc. So this is why now I'll talk about FIRE. So FIRE was a mnemonic first, and now I try to make a difference between progressive web apps for business people, that's the integration part, okay? What most people think when they hear progressive web apps, and FIRE for developers, all the good practice. And now when you talk with people for Chrome, for example, when they say progressive web apps, this does not mean just integration in the system. It means for them really good web apps. There was some evolution recently about that in Android, etc. And for them, the definition of progressive web apps is really there is a good service worker, there is a good blah, 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 all the technologies we'll talk about. And that's it. So what are these 4 letters? Like I said, it's a mnemonic, an acronym mnemonic. So the first letter, F, is for fast. The whole idea behind progressive web apps is to close the gap between the web platform and the native platform, right? To have web apps that could behave as good as possible as native apps, okay? So for example, when you use a native app, you don't expect it to be slowed down by animation. You don't expect to have a really slow warm-up. You want just to open your app, it works right away, okay? And when you continue, it shouldn't crash. So that's what it means behind fast. You want your web app to load fast, okay? First interaction. So there is the idea of first paint. The first time your user will see something on the screen. It's really important for this part to be really short, because when you are on the web, people don't have the time to just wait for 1 minute or 2 minutes. This isn't an app store. You want really it to be instantaneous. So the second part is the integration. Okay, so that's what people hear when they hear progressive web apps. It's mostly add your web app to the home screen, Okay, I will show you that later for the ones that never saw that. And it looks like a native app. So I say later, but just let me demonstrate that right now. So who never saw add to home screen? Okay, maybe I don't have to demonstrate that then. Are you sure? Everyone? Okay, thank you. You are really shy. I need to build some more interaction with you. So, yeah, you see that? Okay. So, we'll start. For example, Twitter is one of the best progressive web apps right now. I will make a lot of demonstration with it because they integrate nearly every evolution in the web platform, especially one which is really fun. We'll see that in the second part. So, when you arrive up, add to home screen, right here. Okay. So, if this isn't a progressive web app, if there isn't all the things we need, talk about that later again, you'll just add an icon, a short link, okay? But if it's a progressive web app, you can see here, yeah. So this is the progressive web app, right here. Okay, here. This is a native app. You'll see that, from my point of view, the progressive web app is better. We'll see why. So, this is just that. You can find your app here, and it's open. Somebody who don't work in our field won't see the difference, right? The main difference here about Twitter here. Yeah. Profile. Yeah. You see that the menu was on the bottom, and here the menu is on the top. That's it. So, that was for the integration part. Then, reliable. So, when you use a native app, you don't expect it to need the network for every feature. You want to use it offline for some features, right? Of course, I always make the comparison, compare it with native apps in this way, but we all know that there is crappy native apps that are really worse than any web apps. But it's just in order to make the distinction. So, reliable is mostly about your web app being able to work offline, being able to load offline. Of course, not for your first time interaction with the website. The first time you need to load something, but when you close your website and then reopen it without any connection, it should work. You should never see the downloader. I didn't add the logo here for the downloader is the little dinosaur you see on Chrome when there isn't any connection, right? So, for example, for me, my slides are progressive web apps, and it often happens that I go to a talk, I open my slides, and I completely forget to connect to the network because it works right away. And then the last part is about engagement. That's the most important part for business people, etc. You want to make people want to use your application, but you also want them to use it again and again and again. This is what we call re-engaging people. So, what are the basic technologies behind these 4 ideas? Mostly, when now we talk about F.I.R.E, there is a lot of technologies involved, okay? Like I said, in the second part, we'll talk about some things that aren't linked to that. So technologies we'll talk about right here. But when you go to a progressive web app workshop, even 4 years after the invention of progressive web apps, you still see the same 4 topics, the same 4 technologies. So I won't go deep dive in this part, just for the ones that never heard about it. I will just explain the main principles. So for the first part, it's mostly the app shell. I will just go right away, just say the words and show you what it means. So app shell for the first part, in order to make your application load fast. Manifest, it permits to make your app installable, the add to home screen. Service workers, it permits your web app to be reliable. And push API in order to re-engage people. So first, the application shell. The application shell, most people think about it as we have a menu, we have a header, and this goes there, and the dynamic parts go there. We just separate these 2 parts. This isn't exactly the idea behind that. The main idea is to have the parts that show on every page. Of course, we talk about single page application here, so not pages, but views, okay? So the common parts go in a small bundle. They shouldn't need to use a really heavy framework, a lot of heavy libraries, etc. You make it the smallest possible, okay? In order to have your first paint and first time to interaction, the first time user can actually interact with your application, to be the shortest possible. And then, for example, if you just make progressive web apps for your blog post about cats, blog posts may load dynamically, so these parts load after that, okay? So main idea is make your common parts for your application as small as possible. Then you can use a lot of complicated libraries, CSS, etc., etc. But for the first thing that you need to load, it should be really light. That's just the main idea behind it, and you'll find a lot of other information about that in order to go deep dive with it in the notes and in web.dev, developers.google.com, and of course MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. So, for the integration part, the add to home screen, I will show you a lot this can I use screen. Sometimes they are wrong. I will tell you if there is something wrong in it. Here, the manifest is actually supported only by Chrome and iOS. We'll see. I will troll about a lot about Apple and Safari here. I will explain you that later. So yeah, you can add an application to on-screen using the manifest. The manifest is like when you write an Android app. You write a manifest in order to have some metadata for your application, describing its name, how it should open, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So you just write a JSON file with all the description for your app, including icons, for example. Okay? But if you don't have a service worker with it, talked about the service worker, it won't work. It will just permit Google, etc., to better index your website. It can be useful, but it's not the main idea behind it. The main idea behind it is to permit to have this add to upstream. One little note about add to upstream, why we don't talk about install? Well, it mostly comes from Chrome for Android, and there is a lot of discussion between Android people and Chrome people. Some people want to have the install, but it's not the same idea. Long story short, it permits to make a distinction between really installing an app from a store, needing to load a lot of things, etc., and just adding to the upstream. It shouldn't download a lot of data when you add your web app to the upstream. It could be instantaneous. So, add to upstream is now supported by Firefox for mobile, actually Android. We talked about iOS, I promise. Chrome for everyone. So Android, macOS, Windows, Linux, etc. And Edge, Edgeium. I don't know if you already heard about that, but Edge decided to drop the core of Edge and just use Chromium. So now Edge will be really soon. They actually released a new icon for it yesterday, but I wasn't able to find the SVG for that. So here we have Edge beta right now. So yeah, really soon Edge will support everything that Chrome supports. So it will be exactly the same Android and desktop. So the work in progress right now. Firefox is working on adding the support for Add to Home Screen for desktop, but it takes some time. It was started in October 17. And the related issue was just prioritized recently. So P3 means, yeah, we'll care about it. We don't know how and when right now, but we'll work on that. So they just confirmed recently that they will add Add to Home Screen support for desktop anytime soon. And then we have the boring part. So one little note about Safari. Safari, mostly iOS, is the new Internet Explorer. Why is that? Some people see that as a conspiration by Apple. It's actually right. Apple mostly use the web platform to kind of advertise for the rest. So they make a lot of money with the App Store, and they want everything to be closed. So for example, now, if you try to make an app for the App Store using web technologies, you can't. It will be refused. Recently, they updated their condition in order to forbid people to have the core of your application loading from a server using HTTP. So you can't use really the web technologies in order to make app for the App Store. They added support for service workers, the technology behind the Add to Home Screen, 3 years after the others. Why is that? Because Apple don't invest in Safari. And this isn't the fault of Webkit people. Webkit people, we'll talk about them. They do a really great job talking about the web platform, discussing some draft, etc. But it's some discussion with business people. So another stuff, when I said Chrome and Firefox for mobile support the Add to Home Screen, not on iOS. Why? Because Chrome, any browser, can't really be Chrome or Firefox on iOS, because the condition you have to respect when you create a browser for iOS is that you have to use the Apple Webkit. So it's Safari again. And you'll see there is some little technologies that Safari support, but most of what we'll talk about isn't supported by iOS Safari. So, Service Worker, no. Service Worker is supported by pretty much everyone. We don't care about Internet Explorer anymore. Just forget about it. Nobody uses that. I hope to see that someday, but right now, yeah, most people have to care about it. So just do some differential serving, adding some polyfills, etc. But for example, Service Worker, you can't polyfill it. Why? Because a service worker is a web worker. What is a web worker? A web worker is just another thread that can't access the DOM. It can't access the navigation environment. It just runs in the background in order to have better performance, etc. And a service worker is a special kind of web worker which acts like a proxy for your web app. So when you register a service worker, it's only related to your web app. It needs to be in a secure environment, meaning mostly HTTPS. And it will be able to intercept all the HTTP exchange, so AJAX calls, etc. And you'll have the possibility to program every little part of your HTTP. So, meaning, do you want to go cache first or network first, depending on your application? Do you want to prefetch some resources in response to some user interaction, etc., etc., etc. So this is why the add to upscale is related to service worker. It's because it's mostly related to how you handle resources. So mostly when a user wants to add your application to the home screen, you know, okay, maybe he'll need this kind of resources another user won't need. And you prefetch everything, you add it to the cache, and if your user reopen your progressive web app without internet connection, it just works as you expected. Okay? Again, it's really just an introduction about that. So, then we have the push API in order to re-engage people. So, the push API shouldn't be confused with the notification API. When we hear about push API, we think about some server that will just send notification to the web app. Okay, I will explain every part just after that. So, notification API is just about showing a notification, a native-like notification. Okay, so you can just write that in your navigation environment, and it will show a notification. The strength of the push API is that it uses the service worker. The service worker works in the background. You don't have to have the web app open. You can show a notification even if the user is not using your web app right now. And how you will do that? The first thing, like I said, progressive, you need to ask for the permission to send notification to this user. So this is a prompt we have on every bad website, okay? When you ask, can I show you a notification? No, I don't want to because I don't know you extra. So you ask for that in the right environment. You explain to your user what kind of notification you will send it and why it could be useful for them. Once you have this permission, you can make a push subscription. So what you will do here is that you ask for the push service to identify kind of your user. So simply it will just give you a key identifying the user and an endpoint URL. The push service is just, you can't choose it. It's just something the people who made the browser decided. So yeah, you have an URL, you have a server, etc. But you just need to know the endpoint the browser will give you and the key. And once you have that, you save it to your server and you know, okay, for this user, I can use this endpoint and this key in order to send him notification. And how will you send notification? You, from your server, backend, mostly. I don't see any good use of that. Expect maybe some demonstration in the browser, but mostly backend. You will use the push protocol in order to ask for the push service to send your notification. The good thing behind good service is that it's a standard. It's not a web standard. It's an Ethernet standard by the IETF. So the API is the same for every push service, meaning for every browser. You just use the key, use the endpoint, and say, I want to send this notification with this text, this image. It will survive for 1 day, I don't know. What the push service will do with that is that it will wait for the service worker of your user on the device to wake up. As soon as he wakes up, he will send the notification. Sometimes your device can choose to don't show notification in order to don't drain the battery. So you may ask to have this notification show just saying, okay, it's a really important notification. If the device, the service worker, don't wake up until the end, the time to leave, kind of your notification, it will just drop it and never send it to your user. So always care about that. Your user can sometimes never receive a notification. And finally, your message arrives to the device. The browser wakes up the service worker and it sends a push event. And this is where you write your code in the service worker in order to say what you want to do with this notification. So of course, it will show a notification because you don't do this kind of thing without notifying the user. But you can do everything you want in the service worker. For example, for one special kind of notification, you could choose to prefetch some new data, to change some CSS, I don't know, anything you want. And again, if you want to try, etc., there is a lot of demonstration, code labs, etc., about that online. So, okay, that was the introduction, the kind of boring introduction. The same goes for 4 years. Okay, we had a great time at first, 4 years ago, talking about that. Yeah, it's a revolution, etc. But first, after that, nothing changed. Actually, a lot is changing on the web platform. It's constantly evolving. Some may use the expression web fatigue, the new kind of JS fatigue, because there is new draft every day, etc. So what I want to show you here is how you can keep up with that. Of course, go learn, if you didn't learn about it yet, go learn about Service Worker Manifest, Push API, and the App Shell. And I already gave some talks about that. But after that, how can I do a good web app using the last innovation on the web platform? So I will give you some kind of methodology. Here, just the introduction, the really simple idea behind it. First thing, you need to watch for new standards. I will explain how they are made, how they are discussed, and when it's important to care about it, and when it's not, and you can forget about it. If you want, it's open to everyone. I'll again talk about that. So you can contribute, you can discuss with people, give your feedbacks with a new API, etc. No, so you experiment. As soon as this new technology is implemented by at least one browser, go experiment with it and give feedbacks. If you want the web to evolve as you want, to have a good developer experience, etc., the organization behind it need feedbacks from developers. And finally, again, I will show you how it's handled. You can release a beta feature, maybe beta, maybe not, on your web app on production. And I will show you how. So, first, organization. I like to play the game I call the icons, the logo game. But here, what is this logo? Oh, okay, wake up a little. So I know the first part isn't the most amazing part, etc. It's a long introduction, but yeah, don't sleep up. Okay, so who is that? Everyone can answer that, please. The W3C, okay, I heard you. Yeah, what does it mean? The World Wide Web Consortium. So it was created a long time ago by Tim Berners-Lee, etc. Most people heard about that. But okay, when we hear about web standards, we think about W3C. actually there was a lot of issue with W3C. First thing, if you want to really understand how the W3C works, I hope you have a kind of law degree, etc., because reading all their documents is really, really boring. Reading standard is cool. Reading W3C, organization rules, etc., is kind of boring. It's written like any law, so not really interesting. But I'll try to give you the main ideas. First thing, somebody write a draft. So the idea behind it is that I identify the problem with the web platform. Okay? There is this issue. I want the web platform to solve this issue. There will be some discussion in order to really think, okay, is that really an issue with the web platform? Or could we solve that just by using libraries or by just writing some best practice, etc., etc.? Should we really need to make an evolution on the existing standards? If it's the case, there will be some draft, and at some time, the W3C will public a first public draft, okay, when they are confident enough. Behind a draft, there always is a working group. So there is, for example, the DOM working group, the HTML working group, we'll talk about that, the Bluetooth, web Bluetooth working group, for example. So there is some group of people who especially focus on one part of the standard, okay? And they will discuss this draft, give feedbacks. It's kind of complicated to talk about this part because there was how the W3C was and how it's now. So it's the second part. So how it was is that every part of that was closed. The W3C business model is not to make browser pay in order to certify, okay, I'm a W3C compliant browser. It's to make organization pay in order to see if they want to discuss the standards. So if you want to be a member of W3C, it's really, really expensive. But companies are paying. So you have to be an employee of some company who paid in order to be part of these discussions. And there was a lot of issue with that. So you can see another maybe issue, I don't know. Linux worked great with that. Everything needs to be validated by the director. So kind of a dictator. Could be a good dictator. It's weird to use this kind of sentence. So working draft, as soon as they have enough confidence in that, they will make other steps, and at the end, they write a recommendation. A recommendation, sorry, is the name for the W3C for a standard. But you can read the standard at every part, and a lot of browsers are actually implementing things before that, especially in order to have a draft becoming a recommendation, you need to have feedbacks from the browser makers. You don't write it from nowhere. So, some members of the W3C. So, of course, we have browser makers. Mozilla, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Opera. Okay, this is logic. You don't want to make web standards without involving the people who actually made the web. But there is some other kind of companies I will not discuss a lot about. IBM, Oracle, Netflix, Sony, Adobe. These companies have their own agenda with the web. They are not making a web browser. They are using the web, but this isn't just web developers from this company who discuss the web standards. So of course, they want to make some orientation. And you have some other kind of group like l'Université de Lyon, a French university in Lyon. Why? I don't know. So, having this business model, there was a really big problem and a war began. And it started around 97 and mostly about HTML. So, HTML, the W3C released HTML 3.2 and 4 in 97 and 99. 98, actually. And after that, they decided to stop any evolution of HTML. Why? Because they wanted to focus on XHTML. XHTML is just HTML with XML. I suppose a lot of you already use that. It's better for parsing. It's better for extension. It permits a lot of things. But there is a lot of issue with that. And W3C continued to only focus on XHTML, even if browser makers didn't want XHTML at all. So they stopped any evolution of HTML. After that, they just added the existing APIs in browser, which wasn't standardized in the DOM standards. They added them to the DOM standards, but not all of them. And in 2003, Xforms was released. Anyone already used Xforms? Yeah? Okay. Thank you in the front. No? There's just him? Okay. So, let me explain really quickly, because you don't need Xform at all right now. Xform, the idea behind it was just to use XML in order to help people write better forms, but not especially about the web. Okay, so there was a distinction between the description of your form and the representation for the user. And the nice thing behind it is that it could be compatible with XHTML and HTML, both. So people started to hope, okay, maybe we can focus on some other part in XHTML and continue with HTML. Wrong. W3C closed the DOM working group, so it's finished, no more HTML, and browser makers wanted to reopen HTML evolution, they refused. So, no, we just skip with that. So they wanted to have something that was backward compatible. XHTML2, it was impossible to make it backward compatible. So maybe have some kind of mix between HTML4. Remember, here, 2004. 3 new years have passed after that. Last version of HTML, the last main version, 1998. Nearly 10 years. Okay, no evolution at all. So, okay, let's drop XHTML2 and just try to think about an HTML in the open without W3C, because it's a lost battle. So, the browser makers created this logo. Most people don't know about it. Anyone know this logo? No? Kind of a big question. There is what in the name? No? Okay. What widget? Yeah. The what widget is an alternative, was an alternative to the W3C. The idea being, okay, all the issue we had with W3C, being browser makers aren't really heard, developers aren't really heard, you have to pay, you have to be part of a company with its own agenda, etc. Let's just do web standards as we do open source projects. So at first it was, of course, mailing list, IRC, etc. Now everything is on GitHub, and anyone can contribute. Okay? Of course, it isn't always code. It's a lot of text and a lot of discussion. So there's a lot of discussion in issues and pull requests in order to make web standards evolve. So browser makers plus web developers wrote HTML5. HTML5 is kind of weird to say HTML5 because what WG always was about the idea about living standards. Meaning we don't release one version after the other. We keep a standard and we make it evolve as we go. So if there is really small modification, just put it in and go on, go on, go on, go on. And hopefully, W3C reacted, saw that it was good, and created WICG. WICG is what we give by W3C. It's just writing web standard in the open on GitHub, first mailing list, now GitHub, etc. Okay, so we had two organizations working in the same way with the same people, doing the same thing. Recently, W3C and WhatWG made peace. So it was in May, I think. The idea being just, okay, everything about HTML and DOM is done by WhatWG, and everything else is done by WICG. So right now, if you want to watch any evolution about HTML and DOM, you'll go to WhatWG, and any new web API, basically, is on WICG. And the idea behind it is exactly the same. It's open to everyone, web browsers, makers are involved, etc., etc., etc. Yet, there is still some controversies about W3C, encrypted media extension. Anybody remember about that? It wasn't long ago. Now? Okay, so encrypted media extension is the idea to add DRM to web media. So it permits to encrypt some video, basically, and to need some other software in order to decrypt it. So it wasn't compliant with the idea of a web platform being open. You'll have to use some kind of proprietary software behind, etc. And it was all Silverlight and Adobe Flash again, having to have something with the web. So, of course, some people from Mozilla fought it. Not Mozilla itself. Mozilla never communicated about that. And especially the Electronic Frontier Foundation. So Mozilla and Electronic Foundation was members of W3C. After the release of the recommendation, the Electronic Frontier Foundation decided to leave the W3C. Again, there is a really interesting blog post about that in the notes. And of course, the Free Software Foundation isn't part of the W3C, but they may try extra. Knowing that the Electronic Frontier Foundation actually was criticized a lot before they leave W3C because they tried to really discuss. They tried to permit to have an encrypted media extension which could be more comprehensive, easier for developers, etc. But their last proposal was rejected, and they just saw that the W3C had its own agenda, and it could be against web openness. So, okay, that's for the web standards, etc. There is some other things. We talked a lot about HTML, the DOM, web API. Did I forget about something? When you write a web app, what language do you use? JavaScript. Thank you. So do you know who is behind JavaScript? What's the real name of JavaScript? I need you to speak a little bit louder because I can't hear you. ECMAScript. Thank you. So why ECMAScript? Because behind it's ECMA International, the technical committee 39. Just to make it simple, it's pretty much the same idea as everything we talked about before that. It's mostly, the main difference is that you have a version. It's not a living standard, you have some version because it's an actual language, and from started in 2015. I think everyone know about that. They released ES6 and decided to make a new version every year. So this is why you shouldn't say ES6, but ES 2015, etc., etc., after T16, 17, 18, and 19. So it's the same idea. Everything is on GitHub. You can make a proposal. Just a little note about making a proposal. Don't start with that. Try to understand the context. A lot of web APIs seems weird, seems really bad for developers, etc. There is always a reason behind it. So go to the discussion they had about this web API before criticizing it. And then after, when you start to know people, etc., people trust you, you can start to make some proposal. And of course, I already talked about the Internet and Engineering Task Force. It's not a web thing, it's an internet thing. So like before that, we talked about push services. It's an ETF standard. Finally, okay, so when it's just some Markdown, because it's mostly Markdown and HTML, when it's just some text, developers can do a lot with that. So, of course, we need to have some browsers who implemented this draft. I like to see these browsers as Chromium Canary being the alpha of the web. They make a lot of experiments. They develop a lot of new things, and you can test on Chrome before anything else, often. Not always, but often. Firefox right now is kind of complicated because they are working a lot on Phoenix, the new version, and implementing experimenting with the last draft, etc., of course, isn't the priority. Okay? And we have Webkit. Notice that I didn't put Safari logo here. Like I said, Webkit people help a lot in the discussion. Most of them know a lot about performance, system integration, etc., about iOS, Mac OS X, but also Linux, Windows, etc. And for example, there will be some standards we talk about at the end. I will say, yeah, for now, we don't know if it's really better for performance because this comment was made by somebody from Webkit, etc., etc. And of course, some people developing these browsers discuss everything and they give feedbacks. Is this really complicated to be implementing in browsers? Maybe we can't have this in a browser, etc. And we'll have something for the methodology. So, concluding this part. First thing, when I say draft, watch for the new draft. Like I said, don't go for the first draft, etc. Maybe wait to have some things that have been validated, reviewed, etc. And doing that, watching these repositories, you will be able to anticipate some innovation. And this will be what we'll talk about in the second part, meaning what orientation do the web platform have right now? What could we expect from the future? Remember that a draft won't automatically make a standard. A lot of drafts are dropped. So it just keep an eye on that and give you some orientations. Then you can experiment as soon as mostly Chrome, a browser have released an experiment behind the flag in Chrome. You'll be able to experiment with that, make your own web app using this API, etc. But don't release anything when you use that. After that, there is origin trial in Chrome. Origin trial permits you to ask for a key in order to permit your user to have this API, to use this API without activating a flag. Doing that, Chrome can focus on a really small part of user. It's not a release right away. So they will just ask you, okay, where should you use that, etc. And at the end of the origin trial, they will ask you for feedbacks. How did it help your user? What kind of issues had you when you implemented this feature, etc., etc., etc. And with that, they can give feedbacks to WhatWG, WACG, W3C, etc., in order to have a final standards with a final release. And here, you can be confident with the standards. You can use it in your application. Of course, Safari makes some time to integrate some standards. Like Internet Explorer, etc., it's always the same issue. So one little note about beta feature. For some technologies, you can, if it's really critical for your application, it's really a big change for your application, maybe use feature toggling. Okay? Don't release that for all your users. I don't know, maybe, for example, if you are writing a really complicated web app which use some hardware extension in order to communicate with peripheral, before web Bluetooth technology, you need to install some driver, etc., and have some proprietary kind of stuff. Add some feature toggling. Will you experiment with our new Bluetooth feature, etc.? Okay, don't break anything right away because, as I said, it's just a trial. It's just experimentation. And other features, most of what we'll talk about in the second part, aren't critical for your application. It can just be something on top. So you can activate it and just say, okay, this is an experimental feature. It may break, give us some feedback if it breaks, and we'll try to make it better, etc., etc. So, for this first part, as I said, this first part wasn't the most interesting, to be honest, I know. So, I make it quick, and we could start with the second part right away. But do you have right now some question before we start the second part about the future? No question, really? At all? Yeah.
Why does the push API?
Yeah.
Does my phone has to start up a browser first to execute the service work?
Okay, so the question is, does, for the push API, my phone need to start the browser first? Yes and no. Meaning that you need to have your browser working on the background. So, for example, Chrome on Android, it isn't an issue. Okay, it will always work on the background. But if you are, like me, for example, with Chrome on Linux, you need to open Linux Chrome at least once, and then it works on the background. So yeah, for desktop, there is some services in order to start this background service right away at startup. But for most users, the service worker will be available only when the browser is open once. But it's the browser by itself. It's not your web app. Okay? It's just you open your browser. Here, escape, for example, when I have this icon, I know the browser is working on the background and I will have all notifications, etc. That's it. It's the same in Windows, you have in the menu bar, etc. Was it? Okay. Some other question? Okay. Go on.
Oh dear, what was it? The manifest.
Yeah.
Is it always an entire website, or can you pick a specific web page?
Okay. So is the manifest for a whole website, or could you pick some web pages? When you defined web manifest, you register it for some URL. Okay. So, for example, if you have, like I have, conf.wof.show and devoxb-2019.wof.show, etc. It's different domains, so you can't have different service worker for that. But for the same domain, you can say, okay, I have this website or on /foo/bar. I will register just for /bar. And I have another service worker for /foo/toto. Okay. Some other questions? Oh, I'm sure you have other questions. Don't leave him being the only one to ask questions. No? Okay, then we'll start with the part 2. So now we could start the interesting part, the future. Let's go. So, 3 big tendencies. It's only my opinion. Okay, so some people may say that there is other tendencies, etc. There is other tendencies. Actually, in the notes, there is a whole other chapter I will add later on about performance. But here I will talk about 3 orientations I think the web platforms is having right now. So first thing is, okay, it's a clickbait. Put an end to the native apps, etc. Okay, we know this is the kind of war we have right now. Thinking about the future, do you prefer an open platform where all people, including developers, etc., discuss any evolution? Or do you prefer a closed platform, several closed platforms? Me, I prefer, of course, the openness. So I prefer the web platform. And there is a lot of work right now in order to permit to finally close the gap. So, like I said, with integration, with the manifest, with service worker, etc., we have a lot of things we didn't have before. Before that, we used solutions like Cordova, etc., in order to, using web technology, build apps in order to make them available on app stores. Now, with the iTunes scheme, we don't have to use this kind of solution, but there is still some technologies we can't use on the web platform. So, of course, there is draft for that. Second orientation, to adapt to user preferences. So it's also a matter of integration in the system. Caring about what preferences, what settings do have this user on its system, and how can I change my web app behavior based on that. And finally, reduce the need of libraries, frameworks. I think it could be the most important change in the future for the web platform. I don't say more than that. We'll see when we'll be with this chapter. So, first part, an integrated web. So, could we put an end to native apps? So first thing, the add to home screen. Okay, we talked about that before, right? I'll show you how to add that, but there is a new approach right now. So the first approach was to add this mini info bar. So I suppose everyone saw that at least once. You go to a website using Chrome, and you have this little info bar at the bottom of your screen that show, okay, add blah, blah, blah to your home screen. This isn't a great user experience. It was just it is still, but it was just an experiment by Chrome in order to make everyone know about add to home screen. But when there wasn't a lot of websites using manifest and service worker, it was okay. You didn't saw it as much and was pretty okay. But now, a lot of websites have service workers and manifest, so you always see that, and it's boring. So soon, they didn't tell when, but sometime soon, this will disappear. So you'll have to handle the installation, the add to home screen. They already started to permit that. It's a best practice. You should do it in every service worker. So when you have a service worker, your browser will tell, at some moment, depending of what was the idea behind the browser. For example, I think in Chrome, it's after half a minute of interaction with the web app. A before install prompt event is sent. It just shows you, okay, I will show the mini info bar. What do we want to do with that? And if you just do prevent default, it won't show the mini info bar. And it's the best practice. So what should you do with that then? First thing, browsers, this time, not just Chrome, are experimenting this approach. So an install button, which will show in the address bar, okay? The Omnibox. Chrome calls that Omnibox. It's better because it's less invasive. Okay, but if you ask about progressive web apps to people who don't work at all in programming, etc., in software development, nobody cares. Nobody really understood about that. So what this button means for most people, nothing. So it will be a good interface in the future when we'll be able to make everyone understand what really means add to home screen and why it's better in some cases than installing a web app. For now, most people, when they want an app on mobile or even their desktop, etc., they will go to one app store and download something. Okay, they haven't this in mind. So in the future, or for developers right now that you know about it, you can see when you want to install a progressive web app, okay, I have this button, I can install it, but it won't be the better solution. So this one is only on Chrome desktop. The discussion about adding this to Chrome mobile is way more complicated because you don't have as much space, and Chrome care a lot about that. Not Firefox. So Firefox have this button, added this button a long time ago, and I think they never added the mini info bar, etc. I think their approach is really great here. First time you will go to an app which have a service worker manifest, etc., which is you can add to home screen. You will see this message explaining what this icon means. You won't see it after that. Just the first time, okay, for people who don't know anything about software development, web development, etc., okay, now I understand what it means. And the wording here can change a lot, but the idea, I think, is really great. For now, I hope sometime will be a but just to drop that. But the really good practice here, the really best practice, is to handle this in your app. Why is that? Because every app has a different user experience. Making game or a store or I don't know, a blog installable don't mean the same thing. It's not the same thing for every user. The issue with this approach that you can't tell what you will do. Here, okay, I'll install the app, but what does it mean? Will it change how I interact with this particular web application? Will it prefetch something? Will it permit to have some notification extra? I don't know. And especially, you just show it right away. When people open your web app, they'll see that. No context. So the best solution is to add an install button in your web application at the right place. So maybe you want to have this available for every screen, for everyone extra. It's most of the time it's the worst solution. Because in the menu, right here, you don't have a lot of room. You can't tell what you will do when you install, etc. It's kind of the same thing having a button in the Omnibox. So not the best solution in most cases. For some cases, you want to add this at the end of your menu. Okay, it's a good alternative to the first solution. And maybe you want to write your own mini info box, but you can show it anytime you want. And this, from my point of view, these patterns are the most simple to add, to develop, but the worst one because you don't really care about your user behavior, the interaction, when, etc. So the best solution is to go with this button inline in the right place. So for example, you need to know when it's useful for your user to install the web app. If it's a store, for example, Amazon-like, maybe it could be when they check out, when they made their first order. Okay, you want to track your order, just install the web app and we'll send you some notification and you can open it offline because we prefetch the state of your order, etc. For a lot of web apps, signing up is a good place to know, okay, this user wants to keep using my web app. If he wants to create an account for it, etc., there is a good chance you want to have a real app and add it to the home screen. Maybe it can be if you have some news-oriented, content-oriented web app, your blog, I don't know. Just add a button in the different posts. So, okay, maybe you'll see that after reading or scrolling 3 or 5 blog posts, it interacted enough with your application to want to install it. Have some analytics on that. Always make it better. Don't suppose your user will have this behavior. Try something, experiment, and enhance. Always. Of course, there is special patterns. For example, when you write a game on the web platform, most of the time, people won't do a long game session. It's just a really simple game like Flappy Bird or I don't know, and in 1 minute, there is a game over or success. Okay? So the first time you show the game over or success, it's the perfect time to propose to install it in order to reuse this game anytime they want, for example. And yeah, I think we'll take a break right now. And we'll talk about the new web APIs, etc., that will permit to close the app gap right after that. So maybe you have some question about this part? No? Okay then, so coffee break. If you are too shy to ask questions publicly, you can ask me the question face to face. And so we add, yeah, okay. Let's just say at 3:30, 3:30. Okay? In half an hour. So welcome back. Just in order to go back on some question I had during the break. So yeah, again, Safari iOS is really bad about progressive web apps. You can have the add to home screen with iOS, but they made the UX as complicated and wrong as possible. You have to share and then scroll and then go to add to home screen. The other main issue is that you don't have this kind of events. So you won't be able to make your own button. The workaround you have, there is some libraries for that, but you can just write your own. It's just to give a step-by-step to your user. The worst UX possible, but it's the only one you have. And you can't wrap it in order to just send it to the App Store because it's forbidden, etc., etc. So yeah, it's a really big issue. But it works with Firefox, and most of the images we got here are from posts on developers.google.com about this. Again, you have the link in the notes. And you have all the information you need. It's more best practice than standards. The standards are here. Some browsers, Firefox and Chrome, are supported. Some iOS, Safari don't. But the add to home screen is mostly for Firefox and Chrome. I had another question. Oh, yeah. Again, about Safari. About push API. So the push API isn't supported by Safari because Apple have its own service. The idea being that the notifications are handled by macOS and iOS instead of the browser. So this is why they don't want you to use the standard. So back on closing the app gap, maybe you have some other question. Maybe you weren't able to find me during the break. No? Everything's fine? I need an answer for that. Everything's fine? Yes, sir. Thank you. So, closing the app gap. I'm just using sentence expression Chrome and Google use a lot here. The idea being that, like I said earlier, there is still some few APIs, some few operating system capabilities you don't have when you use a browser, and you have when you directly use Android, iOS, etc. So there isn't so much right now, and actually some question I had during the break was answered just with this kind of API. So here, it's a graph from Google. It's a strategy in order to close the app gap. But if you really look at it, it's just WICG process plus a website on which you can open an issue as a developer in order to say, okay, I was able to do that with Android or iOS, but I can't do that with the web platform. And it will be the first problem identification. And people from Chrome will discuss with you about that in order to identify if there is some need to write a first draft for that or not. And there is also a lot of documents, websites, etc., in order to track these evolutions about specifically closing the app gap. But for all the rest, it's just WICG. Of course, it's WICG because it's not about HTML or the DOM, it's about web APIs. And of course, it's linked to the origin trial strategy I talked about earlier in Chrome, etc. So yeah, like I said, you can see Chrome Canary as the alpha of the web because they will more release their experiments than Firefox, etc. Firefox also do some experiments, etc. But it's more internal and they don't want to break anything. Chrome is okay with breaking some things if they want to. So most of the things we'll talk about in the second part, not only about the closing the app gap, but also others, are mostly supported by Chrome. And sometimes not on all operating systems. So there is something you can use directly as a beta feature or using origin trial. Some others, not at all. So the new capabilities, so the new web APIs we have right now in this track, there is 2 that are now available without any origin trial, etc., without needing to activate any flag in your browser. They are available in Chrome. These are the web share target and async clipboard API. We'll talk about that directly. And there is a lot more. We'll talk about badging API. I will give you demonstration of this free one, web share target, async clipboard API, and badging API. But I will just summarize the other ones because we won't have time to go in details into that. So shape detection API, I will not show you that here because it's really, it depends a lot on hardware. And even my Samsung Galaxy S8, isn't compatible with that. My Dell XPS isn't compatible with that. The idea being that on Android or iOS, you can make shape detection on images, like detecting where is the face of someone in a picture, okay, without needing to call any API, web API, API, HTTP, AJAX, etc. This directly use some specific hardware. So it's really complicated to test that and demonstrate that right now. Why is that? But sometimes you have better performance using directly specific hardware than the Google APIs, etc. The contact picker API simply permits to open your contacts like you will do on Android. Okay, so using this API, it's only supported by Chrome for Android right now, and starting, I think, with Android 10. I should verify that. But the contact picker API, just you ask for the permission to access some contacts. Of course, you won't be able to take all the contacts of the user. It would be dangerous to permit that. But yeah, you will just access the contact as you would do with a native app. Get installed the related apps is really useful in production if you also have some native apps developed. It just permits to detect on the device if there is some related apps installed. That's it. So not really fun to demonstrate. And native file system it's one way to access the file system, yeah, like you would do with the same idea as in Android. And wakelock is permits to just better use the hardware when your phone is locked. So it's not really a good practice in most cases, just saying my web app need to do some heavy computing stuff on this device, so don't protect the battery life, etc., etc. So now, async clipboard API, like I said, it's released right now. One warning: when you use origin trail, an origin trail is released really early in the standardization process. So there is often a level 0, 1, 2, 3, the API change. So here, for example, the async clipboard API permits just to do some copy using JavaScript. Okay, it will add some information to your clipboard. Until recently, you were just able to copy text. And the API was directly saying that you will use navigator.clipboard.write text or read text in order to read directly from the clipboard. Of course, this is linked to some permission your user need to give you, etc. It depends on the browser. Now you can directly write. There is a typo right here. It's just write, not write text. Okay, and you can copy anything which can be represented in a clipboard item. So this includes images. So now you can copy images directly. But for now, it's only available on Chrome 76 and more. It's only for PNG. You can't copy JPEG or SVG. And you can only copy one image at once. So here, like, it's the same convention, of course, that with Java. The uppercase here means it's a kind of interface. And here, it's the object. So you use write, and you make, I will demonstrate that, you make a clipboard item. So remember that in the future, you will be able to copy several things at once. This is why this is an array here and not just one clipboard item. So we'll have this demonstration with the WebShare API, the WebShare target. So this is something you really want when you are designing apps for mobile, in order to have some exposure for it. Want to permit people to share what they are doing using your web app or directly the link to your web app, some stuff. So if you're not using the WebShare API, you only rely on what Twitter, Facebook, anything permits based on your URL. So if you just use the share, yeah, I just show you that right here. I need to unlock. You guys said I love cats. So, for example, if you try to share directly, I think I have it in the tabs. Anyway. Here, just click the share button. Of course, it's Chrome Canary. It's not the same interface with Chrome right now. And you want to share it, for example, with Twitter. You just have the URL, okay? And then you write some text, and you need to define some metadata in order to permit the different social networks to have some images, etc. When you use the WebShare API, you directly use JavaScript in order to open this. Okay? So the Web Share API is about sharing something from your web app. The Web Share Target API it's the opposite. It permits to share something to your web app, with your web app. Okay? So the Web Share API is only supported on Chrome for Android and Safari for once. Safari, of course, is not against any of the interests. It's nice if you can share something using Safari. And the Web Share Target here is just available again on Chrome for Android. So, some demonstration. Yeah, and I'll show you the code, etc. after. I'll just open, we installed it previously, the Twitter Progressive Web App. Okay. Yeah. So, here, oh, no. Of course, it's not the same. So, on Canary, and it's like demo. So yeah, I'm not always applying the good practice I gave you. You saw the mini info bar right there. FYI, it's DuckDuckGo behind. It's a really cool project, but I didn't have enough time to contribute to it lately, so there is some issue like that. So I'm just searching the right slide here. It's the demo one. Demo. Okay. Oh, okay. I saw what's happening here. So yeah, a service worker, for information, you have different strategy depending of if you want to show the latest update straight away or if you prefer to have better performance. Here, the service worker DuckDuckGo generate give you the cache version. So as I updated a lot the talk lately, I will need to close the website and reopen it again in order to have the new version. So here I will just use DevOxB version because it's another app, and closing the app gap right here. So here I can just use, and of course it's broke. What's the fudge? Okay, of course, demonstration. It's a demo effect. I will just close it, like I said, because I think it's another version. Okay, I don't have. Okay. So, of course, it's based on your browser, so you don't have issue with that. But here, and if it doesn't work, I will just use my local debugger. Here, DevOxB. I was sure I would have some demo effect right here. I just changed this demonstration last night, actually, in order to show you the Web Share API and not only the Web Share Target API. So, of course, when you develop at night, you make wrong things and you make mistakes. And it could be interesting to have some debugging on that. I think we have time for that. Okay. Oh, okay, it was just slow, actually. So, here, when I click the button, I was just calling Navigator Share, so the Web Share API. So I'm sharing something from my web app. Now I want to share something to a progressive web app. And actually, Twitter handles the Web Share Target. So you can Twitter PWA, of course. Like I said earlier, here is a progressive web app, and here is a native app. So I just sent this text. Okay, pretty simple. Here, and of course, I need to remove this little thing in order to have it stay on the desk. Okay. Then, so it was just here sharing something, so just some text from from a web app to another web app. If I want to share some image, this is level 2. Okay, so just one other level. Here I will just copy the text. So here it was the clipboard API, just copying the text. And here, if you don't like picture, just hide your face. If you like picture, say yeah. Okay, some more energy. Okay, thank you. Yeah, just sharing that. Okay, so you be able also to share directly an image from a native app. The web share target is not about web to web. It's just share something with me. Okay. So here, it's slow, of course. Yeah, just one thing about the Twitter PWA being better than the native app. I actually saw yesterday that there was a lot of performance issues. So here, and I just passed, here it's the clipboard API with text and tweet. Okay. One last demonstration. I will here show you that you can also, and it's pretty nice for Twitter because Twitter doesn't handle an image intent. The idea behind the web share API on the web is the same behind Android. You write an intent, etc. I will show you that later. But you don't have an image data you can share to Twitter. So you can directly, like I said earlier, I just put on this button here in order to use the clipboard API, and I tweeted some text, and here I can just paste. Of course, it copied something else. I guess I will have another demo effect right here. Okay. Here. So an image. And if it doesn't work, and no, it works. Okay. So it was just an image. So it's a workaround if you want to share some image with Twitter. You can use this level 2. So the code behind that, because okay, it's okay to show some demonstration, tweeting something, etc. But we'll have some needs. So first thing, when you want to have the target to define your web API, your web app, sorry, to be a target, a shared target, you need to add this data to your manifest. So like I said, manifest is a JSON file. When you put a lot of metadata about your app, here you just say to the operating system, you can share something with me following these parameters. So here you just define the intent. You define which HTML file should be open, because you could have some different entry points, being if I open directly or if I share, maybe this isn't the same UI, and the possible params, the possible parameters. So here just defining title, text, URL, pretty much what Twitter is doing, and you just have get parameters. So you just have this information in your URL, and you just use window location and search params in order to get the right information. Nothing new here. And then you use this data. Going back on the async clipboard API, it was exactly what I was showing you earlier, and if I show you what was happening here. Oh, so here and H. Of course, I'm always confusing between my different keyboard shortcuts. So here we have, and you'll see that it's really wrong to write it like that, but hey, that's slides. Here. So I guess I will have to zoom a little. Is that okay? You can read that? Yeah? Okay. I'll show an arm raised on the last row, so I think it's okay. Here, source, right here, main. Okay. So I just trying to find exactly where I put this script. Okay, it's right here. So, and of course, yeah, that's better. So here, just have I just defined copy and share. Okay, just two methods, really simple methods. One using navigator.clipboard.writeText. Okay, so this is the old API. You can still use it on Chrome, but now you should prefer to use write directly. So here, we'll add that here. Yeah. So you define the clipboard item, and this is why I want to show you that. So you just define a new clipboard item, and you just define the properties. Okay, here I will just add a blob, and this blob I just fetched it from an URL. Okay, so I download the PNG, I transform the PNG to a blob, and I add this to a clipboard item, and I could just write clipboard.write item. Okay, never forget about the array. Okay, you can't just give one clipboard item to write. And for the share, it was just what I was showing you earlier. Yeah, just navigator.share, and it's really, really simple. Any question about that? No? Okay, we continue then. So just to summarize here, don't confuse web sharing target with web share, okay? And well, you can copy images now. So one other thing we weren't able to do using the web platform was to use some badges. So this kind of interface wasn't available recently, and there is a draft for that. So, of course, here it's a really early experiment on Chrome. So you have another API. Sometimes, for information, sometimes you won't find the right documentation if you want to experiment something really early. I will show you one later on at the end of the talk. So here, for example, badge, this is what you will find in the Web API draft. Okay, this is specific to Chrome. This isn't available on Chrome. So here, this line is just about this should be the API. So maybe if I forgot to maintain this code in the future, this will remain compatible if the API doesn't change until then. And here, it's what you actually can use right now. This is Noël 1. I will show you Noël 2 later. The API I changed some weeks ago. So it's a really simple API. The code isn't really complicated here. It's just about knowing what this is possible and what you can do with it. So when you call badge clear, it just will set the counter to 0, and you have this result. Okay? It could change depending on the operating system you are using, etc. And then you just have set. You don't have increment. you just set the number you want to show. So if you want to just go badge.set42, you will directly go from that to that. That's it. So again, little demonstration. When you want to test this kind of web API, sorry to say that, I'm the first one to be sad about it. Linux isn't great. So please don't edit the video just removing the other part and me saying Linux isn't great. I love Linux, but this is a lot. This depends a lot on the operating system you are using. So of course, when you use a non-modular proprietary operating system like Windows or Chrome OS or even Mac OS X when it works, it's easier to just find the right preference, the right API in the system for the browser developers. The one who make this feature in the browser can find easily this in Windows 10 how it works, but maintaining GNOME and KDE and all the other interface we could have, it's really too complicated. So maybe we can see that on Linux someday, but until then, I'll need to open my VirtualBox. I think I'm using VirtualBox for this one. Virtual machine. Okay. FYI, I'm using here the image you can find online. Microsoft gives that to everyone. If you want to test this, you don't need the license. Of course, you need to download every 6 months a new virtual machine. But if you just want to test something on Edge or Windows, it's perfectly okay. So here's just a little demonstration. You can set here. If you saw, it's really little back there, right here. Yeah. And just clear. Really simple demonstration, but I needed a virtual machine for that. So I will just pause it again because I don't want my computer to burn because it's with Windows, of course. So I said there was a new version, level 2, version 2. Anyway, we call that. So here, the main issue is that with this previous API, you wasn't able to decide what version of your web app, of your progressive web app, you will set counter. Meaning you can have several web apps installed for the same domain and open different instances of this web app, and this will give you several badges. So on which badge should I want to have this counter? Is that the one I'm currently using, this other version, etc., etc.? So this, I will not go in details about that, but just know that now, because of that, it's set experimental app badge or client badge instead of just experimental badge. Okay, and that's it. You can then define navigator, the right navigator, etc., etc. But for the rest, it's pretty much the same interface. Okay, the same API. Like I said, only available on Chrome. It's an origin trial. So if you don't ask for permission to activate the origin trial on your domain, you will have to go to the Chrome flags and activate enable experimental web platform features. You can see that actually this flag is needed by pretty much everything I'm talking about right here. Sometimes if it's a really deep experiment, early experiment, the status on Chrome status is just in development, you need sometimes to activate another flag. This will be the case for another after that. So, of course, only available on Windows and, for once, Mac OS. So that's it for the closing the gap part. Like I said, I gave you a lot of links. Actually, there is some more information about the shape detection API in the notes. I wrote a lot about it before realizing that my Android smartphone wasn't compatible with it. But yeah, just one information. Most new web API that are released right now support some kind of polyfill. So, for example, for the shape detection API, like I said, it even at the end, even in 10 years, I don't know, when every browser will support this API, some users, some devices won't be able to use it because they won't have the right hardware. So you need to have some fallback, and this kind of workaround, etc., polyfill, you will just use some API online, like using Google Cloud or Azure, I don't know. So here, that's pretty much it. Everything else, maybe we'll see that there will be another draft, etc., but pretty much anything else, at least on Chrome for Android, it's okay right now. You can put an end to native apps using web apps. You can replace an Android native app by a web app. It's not the same, like I said, for iOS. Now, having a web that's better adapt to user preferences, etc., mostly come from one draft, Media Query Level 5. Who already heard about that? Nobody? Oh. So I wanted to ask you who read the standard. Of course, I would have known that nobody will raise his hand. It's a really simple standard because media query, everyone sees that media query is or not. Who don't know about media query at all? Okay, so I just show you that when you write some responsive, when you write some responsive thing, you often use this in CSS. Okay, not this, just this. This is a media query saying, okay, depending on which device I am, for example, resolution, etc., I will set another CSS. That's it. The previous version of media query, so level 1 to 4, are mostly about that, just resolution, etc., not about operating system preferences. Media query level 5 is especially about user preferences in the operating system. So, first thing you can use right away is the prefer color scheme. The prefer color scheme is just one part of the media query level 5. Like I said, if you want to read at least one standard right now, and I think it's really a good thing to read this kind of stuff, go read this one, because media query level 4 isn't released yet. It's still a draft too. So media query level 5, it just wrote like this addition to media query level 4. So it's pretty short and pretty simple. You don't have to read a whole draft about a lot of different topics, etc. So here today, it's more and more important to support some kind of dark mode especially on mobile, because it permits to have a better battery, etc. And for some readers, they really need a dark mode. Some people can't really read black on white text. And it's the case with all the stuff we'll talk about in media queries level 5. It's accessibility, because some people need that. And when you add this accessibility feature, it enhances the life of everyone. So, for example, here you add a dark mode because some people just can't use light mode. And everyone who wants to use a dark mode on a daily basis, even if they don't have to, can do so. There is a pretty great blog post again about that, Fear of the Dark, I think. Maybe, yeah, I think, no, it's Hello Darkness, my old friend. Again, the link is in the note. So, here, I just show you, again, a little demonstration. So, I'm on Linux, and it's complicated to set this kind of stuff on Linux, again, because it needs to have some kind of central place where you can do these settings. So it's compatible with Android starting with version 10. My Samsung Galaxy S8 is version 9, and is compatible with, of course, Windows. Again. Yeah, I love, I'm strongly open source oriented, and this is why I'll talk so much about the web platform, etc., because I'm all about openness. And when you talk about integration in the system, Windows is better. Some stuff in openness make some things more complicated. But it's this for the best. So, here, pretty simple. When you use this media query, you have 3 different values possible: light, dark, or no preference. Unfortunately, on some systems, like Linux here, Chrome doesn't detect that the operating system doesn't support this feature, so it just says, by default, it's light mode. It doesn't say no preference. So here I have the style for light mode. I just set dark on yellow. And here it's the real, in Windows, light mode. And if I go I open dark here, turn on dark mode for apps, and you go here, and it set it for all the system, including your web app. So it's really simple. If you want to experiment with that, the code is right here. It's the one I showed you earlier. So I just set a class dark demo. It was just the div around the lorem ipsum, and just set background and color, black, red, extra, extra. So you can see that here, nothing was with the no preference. Even on Linux and even on my Android, it's the light mode by default. Okay. So here is one way to do it. But if you're using media query, please don't do that. Media query level 5 permits to have some kind of variable media query. It's not a good practice at all, neither. The good practice is to just load the CSS your user will need. Never load some JS or CSS or anything that your user will not need. This is dead code. You don't want dead code on the web. So the right way to do it is that you define a dark.css, any way you name it, but a CSS for your dark mode, a CSS for your light mode, and you just use the media attribute. And here you need to use the the prefers color scheme, dark and light, or no preference. Here it's both for light mode. So by default, I will use a light mode, extra, extra, extra. And then you load your generic style. Even better, don't duplicate your code. Use here variables. So in your dark or light mode, you will just set some variables. and in the generic CSS, the style.css here, you will just use them. You use the color and background color as you want, and you don't have to duplicate this code. So preferred color scheme right now is well supported. The release of Edgeium, the next Edge, will change a lot of things because you can see this second column on a lot of features right now, where just the next version with Edgeium, when it will be released, it will be exactly the same compatibility as Chrome. And of course, for this kind of talk, I never mention Internet Explorer. You can also do a fallback. So if you are on Internet Explorer, my bad, for once I talk about Internet Explorer. So if you are on Internet Explorer, you can directly see if this media query isn't available. Your match media will just give a not all. Okay? So we'll just need to insert the right style sheet and you're good to go. So here, on Internet Explorer, none of this will be used. This is why you need to add this JavaScript. So, okay, this is a media query. This permits to have some kind of preferences, etc. For most advanced interface, sometimes you want even to change the user agent behavior. So user agent is what your browser is, etc. To make it really simple. So, for example, when you use Chrome, you can define that Chrome is itself in dark mode, not just the web page, but Chrome is in dark mode, and it will change. For example, how the inputs are shown. Maybe you want to change that. You want to be able to change the fact that these inputs, so on the right it's the default with dark mode, you want to show them with a light mode in a dark mode. It's kind of strange. I don't recommend that at all, but for your information, you can use the color scheme for that, the color scheme parameter. Another really important preference available with media query level 5 will be about motion. So you should know that some people, when they see too much animation on web pages on a screen, they get motion sickness. Exactly the same thing as some of us when we are on a boat. So imagine just using your smartphone, you get sick the same way when you get on a boat. It's really boring. So this is why when you go to the accessibility parameters in most systems right now, you can just set reduce motion, just in order to have less animation in your system. But this doesn't give you anything. So when now we have media query level 5, you can have prefers reduce motion directly and just know that kind of a Boolean if it's set to reduce or not. It should be automatic for you to just, if you define some kind of animation in your web page, just add this media query in order to deactivate it if some user want to reduce animation. Just one thing, why do we need animation right now in the browser? What do we need, not want to? Any idea? What is the main purpose of having animation in your web interface right now, or any user interface? Scrolling? Scrolling. Oh, you're thinking about parallax. That's kind of the worst aspect of animation on the web right now. It's any idea? No? Okay. It's in order to give the user feedbacks. Like for example, okay, well, I won't show you that, but on the buttons previously, when I click the button, I have some kind of animation in order to give me a feedback. Okay, I understand you. I saw that you push this button, and now I'm doing something. And if you don't have this kind of feedback, you know it, you just go, and you will just add 6 times the same event, etc. And it will be very boring for the user after that, because he won't see that the performance issue is not about your app, but about how he or she interact with it. So don't stop this animation. If you are prefer reduce motion, reduce. It's just reduce it, like it said, okay? And of course, you don't do any all your animation using CSS. Sometimes you're using JavaScript. You just use match media, prefer reduce motion, and you can stop JS animation right away. FYI, you can use an add-on for Chrome or Firefox, etc., in order to add this kind of code to every web page, if you want. If you really have this kind of issue, you can just say, okay, I will put away every animation on my desktop computer if I want, etc. So, again, pretty much everyone supports it. It's MediaQuery level 5. So there is a lot more. Go read the standard. Prefer reduce transparency is exactly the same idea, but with transparency. Okay. I don't know about any disability related to that. If you know about it, just tell me. Prefer contrast is just some more details. And it's more details than just prefer color scheme. Prefers color scheme is here again, so I already talked about that. Scripting is pretty useful. It's a media query showing you that the user deactivated JavaScript in his browser. And you may not know it, but there is a lot of users that know deactivate JavaScript. Why? Because they are tired of how bad the web is going right now. Notifications, etc., localization, like I said. So they just deactivated. It's also about tracking, privacy, etc. for some people. Light level is pretty interesting. It's when you are on the device which have some light level detector, it will give you the information about the environment. So you could set some different CSS if you are in a dark room right now, or if you are directly with the sunlight. It makes it pretty easier to read, and permits the user that he don't have to just change the brightness preference on his Android OS. And force colors is just to force colors in your application. Again, I don't really know about why it's useful. I just guess there is some people really needing it with color blindness, for example. But there is some good practices right now about color brightness. You can go, for example, Facebook, why it's blue, because I think Zuckerberg, I think everybody know about that. Zuckerberg is colorblind, and you can see the user interface pretty well with this kind of interface. But you may want to add some more things. And finally, I think it's the most interesting part, but again, I give you one last chance. If you want to ask me some question about MediaQuery level 5, maybe, or even accessibility. Okay. I think we'll just keep some question for the end. So a modular web was telling you that this last part will be about putting an end, not needing so much libraries, frameworks, etc. So I talked about that. There is a lot of reason why we actually need libraries right now. The web platform doesn't permit to do everything. Okay, I actually gave a talk about that 1 month ago. But Yeah, I just go back on that later. So there is one thing you can have on every browser, the ECMAScript modules. It was introduced with ECMAScript 2015. It's really not new. I guess everyone know about that now. It just, for the one who don't know about that, it's just having import-exports in JavaScript. Okay, and know that browsers, all, not Internet Explorer, support that. You are able to dynamically load some JavaScript just using the standards and not using fetch, etc. And this is what we use when I talked about earlier differential serving. It's a good way to know that to identify that you are on Internet Explorer or not, on a modern browser or not. If your browser supports modules, you just load some different modules, files, etc., dynamically without any polyfill for that, etc. If you are on Internet Explorer, you just load one big bundle, ugly bundle with a lot of polyfill in it. But that's not the idea behind that right here. When we use ECMAScript modules, we often have to write this kind of things. If you install some dependencies using npm, you want to directly load some code from your node modules, okay? And you don't want to give the full URL to your node modules because it can change, because you don't want to directly push your node modules to the server, etc. So you use what we call a bare specifier. The standards right now forbid about this, saying you don't have to read it, it's just directly from the standards, that a specifier for import need to be basically an URL. So we need to start with a slash or a dot slash in order to, or a protocol in order to just tell where you can find this file, from where you should load it. So this bare specifier, there is a new draft in order to permit to handle that. It's the import map. Import map permits again to write some kind of JSON, making a correspondence, so saying, okay, this bare specifier, you will use this URL for that. And when you add an import map in your application, it's the same thing as if you wrote this last thing instead of this thing. And this permits, for example, to directly say, okay, I won't push non-modules to the server, it's a best practice, but I will take this version from a CDN. And for example, some other web app in my domain use the same CDN. And if the user went to one other of my website before that, it has this file in the cache, so it will bring better performance, etc., etc., etc. So right now, it's an origin trial. You can use it directly in origin trial. Developers are pretty fun about it, but there isn't any signal from other browsers, so we will see how it will end. But this isn't the most interesting feature behind import maps. The most interesting is the built-in modules. So just one little information about how browsers work. When you open an HTML document, it will load a lot of things. It will load everything your web app can use, all the API, etc. So it needs to load everything to the memory. Okay, it requires memories, processing, etc., etc., etc. And this is why so many drafts, so many discussions, and just by, okay, a library should do that. Because you can load a library just for your web page, okay? But you can't load a web API just for your web page. Once you add a standard, every browser have to implement it, and it will affect performances on every web page. So, how should we solve that? By permitting to dynamically load some web API. So here it's again an experiment, just using the prefix std permits to say, okay, this bare specifier is not about using the import map directly, it's about loading something in the browser. You can't be sure that it will have better performance depending on your device, context, etc. Sometimes, and this is actually what I was talking about when I was saying some guy from Webkit talked about performances, etc. In some cases, loading something from your hard drive could have worse performances than from the network. I don't know exactly about it, but it's an experiment, and it will need a lot of discussion and experiments in the browser in order to have that. Right now, there is one built-in module you can directly test. It's the KV storage. KV storage basically is IndexedDB with better developer experience. So IndexedDB is kind of like the storage API, like make your request like with a SQL database, blah, blah, blah. Local storage have horrible performances, but a good developer experience. IndexedDB have good performances, but a really bad developer experience. KV storage is about having both good performances and a really good developer experience. But there isn't a lot of web apps that will use it. So you don't want to load it by default for every web app, web page, etc. So here, you will just add this import, and then you could use this API. It won't load anything from internet. It won't make an Ajax, etc. It's just, okay, I need specifically for this environment, this web API. If you are asking why local storage, IndexedDB, etc. are not directly built-in modules like that, but it's just because it's a new idea, and the web needs to be backward compatible because there is still some web page which was created 10 years, 20 years ago, etc. So you can't make breaking change in the web APIs. But maybe this will permit to answer this issue. So the link between built-ins, modules, and import map is the fact that you will be able to directly load polyfills. The idea behind built-in modules is also to always have something you can polyfill. So you will just say, okay, I have this path. If I have this standard, if it's available, it will load it. If not, it will directly load the polyfill. But you will need to write your import like that instead of directly std, etc. So this could really change a lot how we address the web platform right now, but it's not for the near future. Maybe we will see some results in 5, maybe 6 years, I don't know, because it will need to have an important impact on the new web APIs that could bring, and especially new components. So one other way we extend the web platform is by defining web components. Who don't know about web components? Okay, so a web component is the association of 4 different standards and permits to define your own HTML element, basically. So it's 4 different ways to extend the web platform. The WhatWigi side of the web platform, HTML DOM, okay? So first, you have custom elements. This is where exactly you define the class, a JavaScript class, and by doing so, you will associate it with a new element name, and you just write after that the element in HTML, and it will load your JavaScript, etc. After that, you have the shadow DOM, which permits to have some isolation between some sub-DOM and the rest, so it permits to better extend CSS. basically, ES module, we already talked about that. And HTML template just permit to have defined some HTML in your page that will not show right away, but programmatically that you can use. I'm just going quick about that because I just see there is just 6 minutes left. So now web components are handled by everyone because Edgeium will be released really soon, so it will be compatible with exactly the same thing as Chrome. So for now, for Edge, you still need to add some polyfill, but it works. And so here you write your own new element. So it's a new kind of modularity for HTML. But you still need to load some library. You still need to load this web component because it's JavaScript, it's CSS, HTML, etc. It's custom, okay? FYI, pretty much everything you see here are web components. But what if we'll just use this approach for new components we could load dynamically from the browser instead of from the internet, etc. So there is right now 3 experiments about that. And progressively, this isn't something you should use at all. Experiment with it, is try to find if it have some good performances, etc. But first, the interface is horrible, and second, you can't be sure that it will permit to have better performances. So we have 3 virtual scroller. It's just a new component, built-in element that permits to have some kind of virtual scroller, okay? Just to be clear, built-in elements aren't web components. It's the same approach from extensibility approach, okay? But it's also exactly the same approach as how HTML elements were defined. It's something that should be implemented by the browser, etc. Just don't load everything for every web page. So the virtual scroller is just a pretty simple virtual scroller like that. You just add an import std virtual scroller, and you'll be able to just write your virtual scroller like that, and you have a range change event where you could know that your user reached the end, and you add some new HTML inside, etc., etc., etc. Oh, this Windows, okay. So here you just make the test. If it's just the first item, you don't have anything to do actually. And if everything was shown, you want to add some new HTML children's into your virtual elements, virtual scroller, and it will just show it, okay? Another is std switch, like you could see, is not about how it looks like. It's really ugly like right now. It's just technical experimentation. So that's just that, exactly the same look and feel as with Android, but just worse, just horrible, because it's just an experimentation. And the same thing, yeah. You need to import and then use. Okay, so it will just permit you to use std switch. That's it. That's just a new kind of input. Toast are really ugly, really ugly. And there is 2 things in discussion right now in the draft. It's really an early draft. 2 APIs. Right now, I was just able to test this one into Chrome because there isn't any documentation, etc. You need to go to the issues. It was released really recently behind the specific flag. So when you do that, it will add an std toast element each time to your HTML. So it's really not the good practice here. If I go to the impact, here, okay. Okay, escape. Okay, I think I don't have time for demonstration here, but just if you inspect here, you see that in this document, it will add a new show toast, etc. A new toast every time. So the better API is this one. You will just say, I want to show this element, so you just query it and show it, and that's it. So let's wrap this up after these 3 long hours. What you should do when you are making web apps is first to take care about the progressive approach. Okay? If you are just starting with this kind of stuff, etc., just when you go back to your project, experiments with some service workers and some manifest, etc. Maybe you don't need manifest, but just try to make a better user experience, just using these 4 years old innovations. But never do it without caring about the user. It's always about your user experience. Asking for notification, asking for location, any web API, you do it in the right context when your user understands why you are asking to do that. And then go watch WACG, WhatWG, or at least Chrome status. If there is only one thing you should watch, it's Chrome status. Because when you get some notification, by the way, it's a progressive web app. When you get some notification from Chrome status, it's on the right time, okay? You just learn, okay, they are starting to experiment this feature. Or, oh, this feature isn't an experiment anymore, etc., etc. Okay? But if you want to go deeper, go make some origin trial, go make some feedback, and start just by reading things and discussing with people. There is a lot of discourse, etc. for that. And give your feedbacks. It's really important to have a web platform that is built with, which involves developers in the process, okay? And especially if you aren't web-centric. It could be complicated, but especially for that. Okay, I know time's up. I will just remind you, I will just post everything, every link, etc. on Twitter right away. So it's Noël_MAC. It was actually the last time for this season meaning semester, I'll give this talk, Web on Fire show. I take a break in order to write some more blog posts, etc. Maybe even a book. So stay tuned on DevTo. For once, there will be some blog posts in order to have some more information about that. You already had the GitHub for that slides. And finally, you have, again, the QR code in order to get these slides, but not the slides specific to Devoxx BE, but the continuously deployed version. Thank you very much.